My name is Leo Schumaker. We're here in Bellingham, Washington for a climate control panel. The mayor will be speaking over here, plus other speakers from the college, from the community, talking about how we can save our community in a positive way. So I look forward to seeing everybody here, talking about this great event.
Showing your commitment to climate work, climate action through being here. We're really glad to have you here as the kickoff to Bellingham's Climate Week, which we are titling Inspiring Community Action Through Climate Conversations. That's the theme for this week, and at 4:15 we'll be having a conversation with members of our community about climate. I have the honor of introducing Bellingham's Mayor Seth Fleetwood. We've been really fortunate to have Mayor Fleetwood at the helm of our local government, given his long-standing commitment to climate action. In addition to terms on both the Bellingham and the Whatcom County Councils, he was chair of the Whatcom County Climate Impact Advisory Committee, where he delivered vital recommendations on adaptation plans and achieving 100% renewable energy. He's also one of the first signatories on the Race to Zero, which will set new and advanced carbon pollution targets for Bellingham. Regarding climate action in general, I can't imagine having a more supportive and involved mayor. And I can't imagine really a better first name, Seth, that just rolls off the tongue. Such a great ring. Please help me welcome Bellingham Mayor Seth Fleetwood.
Thank you, everybody. Is this one of those mics you have to kiss, Seth, to make it work? Can you hear me in the back? I assume people can. It's really nice to be here on this last Sunday of the summer. We got lucky with the weather. I thought it was going to be kind of like a cool fall day, so I put on a black parka, which was brilliant of me. Maybe I'll take it off. It's my honor to be here and participate in welcoming all of you to the beginning of Climate Week. I think people know that inspiring community action through climate conversations is the theme for our, I guess it's 4th annual All In for Climate Week, which starts officially right here today. I want to thank the partner organizations, all of the vendors who showed up. Specifically, I want to, oh, there you go, Jill, how's that? Is that better? A little better? Specifically, I want to thank our natural resource staff in Bellingham Public Works who helped to organize this in recent weeks. It's no small feat, so thank you all. They know who they are, but it's much appreciated. I have been an environmental protection advocate my entire life. I'm not precisely sure why, but I think it probably had something to do with the fact that I got to grow up here in the Pacific Northwest. Maybe because when I was a little kid, I lived in England for a year, and I got to see what small, compact towns looked like surrounded by non-sprawl countryside. And of course, starting about 30 years ago, we began to see sprawl happening in the Pacific Northwest. And there's a lot about sprawl that is not a good thing. And more recently, though, as it relates to climate action, it was 10 years ago that I recall distinctly learning from a man named Bill Dewey, who I forget the name of the organization, but it's an aquaculture state association, and he was speaking at some Bellingham event, and he was talking about the effects of ocean upwelling in the Salish Sea. And I confess I was not familiar at that point in time with ocean upwelling. And what I learned was that the Pacific Ocean cycles on a 30-year cycle with continuously increasing warm and acidic waters from the Pacific Ocean because of carbon pollution. And so this light went on in my head. It's not just about regional efforts to protect some particular environmental aspect. It's about the whole world, because not just people in Bellingham and the United States are contributing to carbon pollution in the Pacific. So that's sort of the first really profound awareness I had as it related to the importance of taking greater climate action. I prioritized climate action in my administration. Of course, it's important work that began actively, probably in 2005, 2006. Our first climate action plan was 2007. We had an important update a few years ago. The City Council, many of you know, prioritized the importance of taking increased action on climate with the Climate Action Task Force, with the intention of finding ways to accelerate our commitment to the needed transformation. Many of you may have followed the fact that a year ago I recommended that we create something called a Climate Action Fund, and that notion was born very much out of the idea that all governments on Earth, international, national, subnational, local, county and city, everyone needs to be doing their proportionate share for climate transformation. And I was trying to respect the work from the Climate Task Force and the Climate Action Plan that prioritize creation of a sustainable, dedicated climate action fund. I put that forward. It became clear that we need to do more work in building broad support for it. So we put a strategic pause in place in June, still very much committed to it. There's still a lot of important work that's going to come from it. We believe that with a dedicated sustainable climate action fund, we'll be in a better position to leverage private, state, federal dollars to do the work that we need to do here in Bellingham. So while that climate action fund is paused at this time, the benefits we derived from that deep dive have been profoundly important. It triggered a lot of really important conversations in the community. It forced our climate staff and a lot of people in our natural resource section in the city of Bellingham to much more deeply explore what we need to do moving forward and prioritizing what means we're going to take and implement. So it was important work. It generated vital community conversations and opportunities for further reflection. I think we're now poised to apply this knowledge to the challenging opportunities in front of us. One of the exciting things that's happened just in the last couple of months is the Inflation Reduction Act. I think it was $369 billion of money nationwide has been dedicated to climate action, climate work. Our staff is still actively looking at what that's going to mean for Bellingham. There's a lot of important work that's going to be done at the federal level in figuring that out. Rulemaking at the federal level hasn't yet happened, but in the coming year, our staff is going to be actively monitoring what that's going to mean for the city of Bellingham. And I look forward to that. As it relates to that, I also have announced creation of a climate office that's going to be housed in the mayor's office to demonstrate increased attention and prioritization to this work. While we're sort of seeding the beginning of that office, it's our intention that over the coming months and years, that office will only grow, commensurate with the work we do, the challenging, complicated work we do of transformation. We're very fortunate that we live in such a dynamic community. We're fortunate that we live in a community where a very healthy majority of us understand the importance of climate science and climate action. We are very well poised to do the work. If we can't do it here, hard to imagine that we could do it in a lot of other places. So I'm proud of our community and the work we're doing to create a sustainable future for our children and grandchildren. I'm excited today to hear from community representatives who are going to be willing to talk about what matters to them. Indeed, the theme of the week, Inspiring Community Action Through Climate Conversations, is something we hope happens at a broader scale throughout the week and ongoing. We'll hear from a health officer today. We'll hear from a founder of the Multi-Faith Network for Climate Justice. We're going to hear a first-generation college student and aspiring urban planner who's here today, and others who are willing to be part of the climate conversation that's coming up shortly. Again, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. Thanks for having your heart in this important work and being supportive. It matters enormously. So let's keep the conversation going. Thank you all for being here. It's going to be a really great week.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Seth Fleetwood. Let's give him a round of applause for all that climate leadership that we're all benefiting from. Thank you, Mayor.
Here's the question. Can you name the 5 species of Pacific salmon? I can't. Can you?
I sure can.
Can you tell me then?
Yeah, I've got a little hand trick to teach you. So it starts with your hands.
Okay.
And there's 5 of them. So chum for your thumb. And then we've got sockeye for your pointer finger, if you think about socking yourself in the eye. And then your tallest or king finger for a king or a Chinook salmon. And then if you think about putting a silver ring on your ring finger for a silver or coho salmon. And then we've got pink salmon for your pink finger.
Clever. What's your name?
Kelsey.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We're talking to Sylvia about how to ease a children's climate nightmare. What do we do, Sylvia?
Well, this is a project that we're doing with my friend Lisa Citron over here. And basically, you can write an idea to help the environment and send it to someone important to you or a government official. And that way we can get the word out. We can also get children's ideas out into the world to help the environment and get people aware of that too. So.
And you have a list of representatives over here. Important. Good. Thank you. And a mailbox.
Yes, a mailbox too.
I like that.
Really clever.
So, have you sent a lot of postcards in yourself?
Yes, this is my sister's, and this is actually my invention that I did in 4th grade. It's a tree planter.
Look at that. That's wonderful, Sylvia.
I want to take one of those.
All right, thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you.
We're here talking about postcards with Kim. Now, Kim, you made a good point. I never thought of this. Tell us.
Well, interestingly, we have an event here at the booth at the Climate Action Week kickoff that we have postcards being sent to representatives. And it turns out that I had a bunch of high schoolers writing on the postcard. They didn't ever send a postcard before in their life. It was so interesting, so I had to show them where to put the address, where to put the stamps, and they were pretty excited because they had never sent a postcard before.
And you educated them.
And we did some education on the side.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
We're talking to Michael Fear, the Executive Director of What Come Million Trees Project. How did it get started, Michael?
We got started about 1.5 years ago with the inspired idea that was originally proposed by Sapal Sidhu to plant 1 million trees in town, or in Whatcom County, I should say. And we took the ball and kind of ran with it by making a nonprofit that not only is about planting trees, but is about protecting trees and connecting people to greater understanding about how trees provide so many benefits. And we do that through like community events and film events and things of that sort. So we got kind of a 3-pronged strategy that we do. And we've got over 300 planting volunteers on an on-call list that we use for our work parties. And we've got an admin team, some of which is here this week with me, who we do all the admin side of things. We're an all-volunteer organization, and we are doing projects in the city and several parks, as well as elsewhere in the county.
So what kind of trees do you plant?
That's a good question. So we plant native trees. Usually in most of our projects, it's the larger natives, like Douglas fir, western red cedar, grand fir, things of that sort, big leaf maple. And so that's most of what we do, but in some of our parks work, we also are planting small to medium-sized trees. It depends on the situation. Again, with city parks, we coordinate quite a bit with their landscape architects and stuff to make sure we're doing the right trees in the right places for, what they see as, multiple goals beyond just capturing carbon.
How'd you get involved with it yourself? Have you always been interested in trees?
Well, yeah, I've had a close, lifelong relationship with nature, and before I was gone after raising my daughter in Bellingham. I'm a 32-year-old Bellingham resident, 32 years Bellingham resident, not 32 years old. And after raising my daughter here, I rented out my house and spent 12 years slow exploring the world and wildernesses throughout the world. And then I came back in the middle of the pandemic and decided to reroute myself here and do something about climate action. And so when I caught wind that there was some talk about a Million Trees project, I kind of plugged into a few people that were talking on Zoom about it. And after a couple of months I said, hey, why don't I start a nonprofit for this? Because I have a whole lifelong background of starting ventures for social good. So it kind of is up my alley, so to speak, to do something like this. So I was happy to do that. And it seems to have taken off quite a bit. We've gotten quite a good buzz in the community, and trees are something that appeal to the heart of quite a number of people in this town. And although it may seem like we've got a gazillion trees here, actually we're experiencing a lot of tree loss and deforestation, and there's a need to do our part for the climate and biodiversity crises, and also to increase the resilience of our local communities, because as we all know, now we're experiencing floods and heat domes and all these things, and trees have an enormous positive potential to mitigate some of that stuff. So that's why we're planting and protecting trees here. It's all those reasons.
So Michael, is there a website or a Facebook page or Instagram?
Thanks for asking. So WhatcomeMillionTrees.org is our website, and we have a Facebook page and Instagram page as well. If you just go to our website, you can find all that stuff from there. And we have, people can sign up for work parties if they'd like to spend a couple hours on a Saturday afternoon helping us out, either removing ivy from trees or planting trees if it's the right time of year, or preparing sites for future plantings. So we have, through the rest of this year, we've got like 2 or 3 work parties a month, usually on Saturday mornings. And then, like I said before, our admin team is volunteer as well. So if there's people out there that have, a special skill that might be handy for us, we would love to hear from them.
Thank you, Michael, so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for your interest.
We're having this event here because we recognize that we create our best solutions to whatever challenge we're facing when we inform it with a diversity of perspectives and voices, especially those that we don't hear nearly enough. With something like climate change that affects each of us differently depending on where we live, our income, the color of our skin, and other factors, this becomes even more true. We wanted to highlight some different perspectives from our community. These are not intended to be exhaustive of all of the perspectives here, but we do have 4 folks that we wanted to highlight. We have a student, a business owner, healthcare professional, and a representative of the faith community. Come on up. And we'll have Jen, Suzanne, Gib, and then Betsy. Okay, awesome. We made it. We made it to the stage. High five. High five. Good job. High five. We did it. We got up there. Okay. Starting on my left here, we have Jen Gonzalez, who's a first-generation college student whose family is originally from Mexico. At Western, she studies urban planning and sustainable development with a minor in risk reduction. To Jen's left, we have Suzanne Taylor, who is an insurance agent, 17 years, is that right? 17 years in the insurance world, and also runs the DISH Foundation, which stands for Dignity, Independence, Sense of Purpose, and Hope. And DISH works with Our Kitchen, which is one of the vendors in the back that works with intellectual folks that have intellectual and developmental disabilities. Awesome spot over there. Next we have Dr. Gib Morrow, who's the health officer for Kitsap County, formerly the deputy health officer for Whatcom County, and before that a physician with Peace Health Medical Group. Welcome. And finally, Betsy Gross, who's the founder of the Multi-Faith Network for Climate Justice, and she's engaged in community activism and climate change planning, social and environmental justice, child welfare, and dementia care advocacy. So I'm going to ask 3 sets of questions here, each focused on one aspect of how our guests are relating to this climate crisis. We'll first explore fears and concerns, then desired actions relative to their areas and hopes for the future. And we'll try and keep our answers 2 to 3 minutes. Forgive me if I butt in, but I just want to make sure everyone has a chance to talk here. So we'll start here with the elephant in the room, which is worry. Collectively, climate change is on all of our minds, and often in a really worrying way. A recent study of 10,000 young people aged 16 to 25 across 10 countries showed that nearly 60% of respondents said that they felt very worried or extremely worried about climate change. Here in the U.S., 1/3 of Americans labeled themselves as alarmed by climate change, and another quarter are concerned. We'll start with our first round of questions and explore this area, and we'll begin with those who will be living with this issue longer than anyone here, our student population, and we'll start with Jennifer. So first question. Jen, in your conversations with other college students about the climate, what concerns are you hearing?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I think reflecting back at classes and stuff that I've taken at Western and just time that I've taken to talk to my peers and people my age, I think a really big concern that we hear about is just like all the reports and data and scientific evidence that, you know, scientists go through the really hard trials and tribulations of gathering, and then for all those reports and those statistics, those figures, to be just not really the core of policy work in terms of environmental work. I think it's not the fact that there's not enough things being produced that show that there's impacts to the climate right now, or the impacts that humans are making. I think it's more so because it's such intensive work for it to go through policy work and to actually make change. Those things take a really long time, and I think for a lot of people my age, and everyone else really, it's kind of just scary because it seems like impending doom. And it's like, we have all this evidence that these things are actually happening, but what's being done? But I think the reality is just that work takes a lot of time. And I think for people my age, it can be frustrating to see that. But I think it's also like, on the inside, that work is just really hard to get done and prove to other people why it's important. And I think right now it's just about communicating why that information is important and knowing who you're talking to, and just really allowing people to understand the magnitude of what scientists are finding, and just explaining it in a way that's understandable to just the general audience and also the main people who are making change, politicians.
Thanks, Jen. Sorry, I'm just gonna get my notes here. Okay, so we'll move to Suzanne, from the small business perspective. What issues is climate change creating for small business? What concerns you as a small business owner?
Thank you. You know, from a small business standpoint, things like climate change can affect you just even on a day-to-day basis. For example, we, in the blue container over there, you know, we really try and have items that are compostable. But the reality of it is the non-compostable items, the plastics, are a lot cheaper. So, you know, a lot of small businesses want to be part of the solution, but there's a lot more cost involved in it, right? And I think, you know, Jen, you touched on a really good point, that this just takes long. It takes a long time for something like this to change. I think that it's really easy to be excited about something, and then you keep going on with your daily life, and you're looking at what's convenient, and then you kind of lose some momentum, right? And I think that constantly having different events where you can bring awareness is really helpful. So I think that, you know, a concern from the business standpoint is being able to contribute to a solution, be part of the solution, but also be able to find items at cost. I know that there's different resources out there that will help businesses like us find more affordable compostable items, and so that we can do our part and bit by bit. Now, if I put my other hat on from the insurance world, you know, I see a bigger concern. You know, I grew up here, and I just see those wildfires each summer becoming more and more intense and spreading and hitting more areas. You know, it used to be you only heard about it like in California or, you know, some of the much warmer place not closer to us. I think we were lucky this August where it wasn't as bad, but in the last couple of years, that smoke is terrible, right? So that's right in your face, that's forefront, and it's going to make you remember, okay, what's going on with our climates right now? And you know, from the insurance standpoint, you get those wildfires, you're going to have massive losses. The insurance companies are going to be paying out more. People are losing their homes. There's, you know, let alone what's burning up into the environment. But, you know, that's also going to be it's going to affect costs as well, because now these wildfires that are happening all the time, those the actuaries and the insurance companies are going to be working that into your rate, right? So everyone ends up paying more. So I think those are kind of some concerns that come to my mind.
God, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Gib. Gib, what are your primary concerns about the effects of climate change or the causes of climate change on the health of the people here in the Bellingham and in the greater Whatcom County community?
Yeah, thank you, Seth. And just listening to Jen, it occurred to me, you know, one of the big concerns is people are worried about this, and particularly our younger generation is legitimately very, very concerned about this. This is a group that's been impacted by a 2-year-plus global pandemic. There is a looming crisis of anxiety, stress. It's a chronic stressor amongst our younger generation, and they are very appropriately concerned about this. And so there are mental health impacts that I think need to get factored into the equation. There's the obvious thing, heat kills. I remember in 2003, a heat wave in Europe led to 15,000 excess deaths in Paris. Well, guess what? 2 months ago, the same thing happened. Only 11,000 people died. I don't think it even registered because around the globe, a third of Pakistan is submerged in water. That leads to waterborne illness. You know, right now in many parts of the Southwest, we're just seeing mega drought conditions, diminishing aquifers. There's going to be a significant impact on our food production. It's pretty endless, really, in terms of the looming catastrophes. I mean, Suzanne talked about wildfires, and a year ago, August, Winthrop in the Methow Valley had the worst air quality on planet Earth. The air quality index was in the 700 range for a week plus at a time. People shouldn't breathe that. It triggers cardiovascular events, stroke, respiratory impairment. A week ago, we almost had to ask our kids to suspend school sporting activities. So there are days now when you can't literally go out and exercise, or you shouldn't. I mean, all these things are really concerning, in a million different directions. But I remember just 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I was practicing, and I made a diagnosis of West Nile virus in a local professor, and he hadn't left the state of Washington. So now we've got the mosquitoes that cause West Nile virus, and now the Nile is in northern Africa. But we're seeing a 4-fold increase in Lyme disease. A month or two ago, the first tick-borne case of anaplasmosis occurred right here in Whatcom County. That was the first case of this tick-borne disease in the state of Washington. So you're getting encroachment of different disease-borne vectors, communicable diseases, stress issues, food production, you name it. So there's a lot to be concerned about.
Great, thanks, Kip. And Betsy, from a spiritual perspective, how do you think the climate crisis is impacting people's spiritual well-being?
Thank you, Seth. Yeah, I just got back from a trip to see extended family in Minnesota. And I spent time with extended family members whose kids never went outside, who spent all their time on their phones, who, when they did go outside, went around on their four-wheelers, and they didn't know a bush from a tree. They would see ducks and frogs as animals to harass and throw rocks at. I found that it left them soulless. It left them unattached and unmoored from their experience of the world around them. They were not moved by the majesty of creation. And kids who don't see, or anyone who doesn't see or experience the wonders of the world around us, who can depersonalize the life that surrounds us, can therefore exploit it and mistreat it and not protect it. To depersonalize a thing allows you to not love it and not care for it. To quote Chief Seattle, I'm sure you've all heard this quote, it's very famous, that he said that we are a thread in the web of life, and that what we do to that web, we do to ourselves. And so to see this and know this allows you to be clear-eyed about the suffering of this world and what we're doing to destroy it. So suffering, I know this is sort of a negative virtue, but suffering has a value. I have a Buddhist friend who tells me that suffering is a core tenet of their Buddhist traditions. And but suffering awakens us to all our possible losses, which we can see with clear eyes. And it allows us to, it inspires us to step forward into our sacred obligation to protect this earth. So therefore, I sort of believe that our spiritual well-being can be awakened by the suffering that we experience and the grief we experience because of the losses we see happening all around us.
Thank you. It's a great transition there to our next set of questions, talking about action, right? So take a big deep breath here. Okay, we heard all that. We're moving on into action. So it's been said by many in a lot of different ways that the best antidote to worry is action. You may be aware, and you just heard the mayor talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, which will put $370 billion toward climate action. This is historic climate legislation globally, and it'll get the U.S. 2/3 of the way to our carbon reduction targets for 2030. This is big, big news. 40% of the funding that'll come out of this Inflation Reduction Act will focus on disadvantaged communities of color and low-income folks who are hit first and hit hardest by climate change and the causes of climate change. And it's going to provide enormous opportunities across a number of communities, including our own here in Bellingham. So with that, we want to explore the types of actions that our guests here would like to see relative to their areas. And we'll start with Gib. Gib, what would you like to? What do you see as the role of the medical community in the climate crisis, and what sort of developments do you want to see there relative to the climate crisis that we're in?
Check. Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I mean, I think with regard to what can the medical community do, I think we want to let people know, for example, that there are real, legitimate, ongoing changes that are happening in our ecosystem. So once upon a time, you really should only eat raw oysters during our months. So in other words, cook them during the summer months, because Vibrio, which is a close relative of cholera, lives in warm marine aquatic environments, and when the water's warm, it's in our shellfish, and we measure that at the public health level, and we issue warnings, and we try to monitor that sort of thing. But what's happening is that now we're seeing throughout the course of the year, people are getting Vibrio infections, for example, and I think really the role of the medical community needs to be making those connections, letting people know that as this new mosquito crosses the Cascades or this new tick-borne illness shows up, that these are significant ongoing health issues that are related to climate, and really to, I think, act as a trusted messenger and a rational voice and a bearer of truth, that in fact this is happening and it has real and significant impacts, and those impacts are going to disproportionately impact marginalized people, people that are living on the margins, and this is going to impact all of us, but it's going to hit some of us, as all things do, a lot harder than others.
Great, thanks, Kip. Betsy, to you, what do you think the role of the spiritual community is in serving our community and humanity in general through this crisis?
Thank you, Seth. Well, I'd like to start by making a little plug for the Multi-Faith Network for Climate Justice, who's tabling at today's event. MNCJ represents a multitude of faith communities and spiritual traditions here, wisdom traditions here in Bellingham, who are committed to addressing climate justice in all its forms. The commitment spans a variety of activities, both personal commitment, and each faith tradition has a commitment as a community to address climate, what it's going to do about climate justice within its community, and how it's going to interface with Bellingham at large to speak as one on behalf of protecting the earth. I would like to also say that this is nothing new. Spiritual communities have a centuries-old tradition of serving impacted areas all around the world, which now includes areas that are impacted by the climate crisis. As Gib just mentioned, it impacts the marginalized and the poor far more than it does the rest of us. And spiritual communities have always been committed to working with the poor, welcoming the stranger. It's a centuries-old tradition. And now we are called upon to include responding to the suffering of the earth itself. This is not just a humanitarian issue. For spiritual communities, it's a deeply spiritual issue. It's a calling to heal, to protect. It's a moral duty to serve with love.
Great, thank you, Betsy. So move to Jen here. There are plenty of students here. Raise your hand if you're a student, college student, secondary student, primary. We have so many people who are wondering how to get involved in climate action, how they fit in. What's your message to folks who are wondering how they can engage with this topic?
Thank you. So I think climate work is so broad. I really think you could do a lot of things with it, from like housing to transportation to like ecological mitigation. There's just so much under that umbrella, and I think for anyone looking to get interested in it, just find like a little niche that you're really passionate about. Like if you think we should have better roadway systems, get into transportation. There's a lot of sustainability work that can be done in that. I just think like really having something that you're passionate about and then acting on that, just because a lot of climate work can be really exhausting and kind of disappointing at times, just because again it takes so much time to make the ball start moving and stuff. So I think having something to kind of ground you back like having an interest that you really like and pursuing that interest in climate work really helps. I think another thing that I would recommend to anyone looking to get into climate work is making sure you find people who have similar just values and beliefs as you in terms of environmental work. Just because, again, that the work is really long term, and you need to make sure you're mentally, emotionally, physically well to, I think, pursue this kind of work to the best of your ability. And so having people around you that can really ground you and bring you down to earth when you're just not feeling your best, especially when pursuing this kind of work, I think is really important and valuable. But yeah.
That's good.
Right on, thanks for that. And then finally, Suzanne, what's the role of the small business community in this climate crisis? What actions or developments do you want to see happen in businesses like your own?
Thank you. I really think that as, you know, small business owners, you know, we can kind of band together and support each other. Supply and demand is a big issue. Especially in the food industry, you know, the containers that they go into, what you're using, the food, everything. And when we're looking into compostable items, it can be really overwhelming. When you're all of a sudden decided to make that change, or you're looking into the options to make that change, it can be overwhelming. The items are going to cost more. Maybe you're not sure where to find the distribution. And so first and foremost, I would say, you know, take it one step at a time. Right? You can't change the world in a day. But if you can pick one or two items that you are representing or selling or consulting about, and you can change that and try and make it into, you know, a more environmentally friendly option, then that's a start, right? So I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed. I know that Sustainable Connections has been a great resource for us. They've been super helpful. They provide a ton of information. It's for free. They've printed the signage for us that says proudly using compostable items. So I think as a small business owner, if all of us are switching, so let's take the food industry, if all of us are switching toward the compostable items, there's going to be a stronger demand. When there's a stronger demand for a product, your price can be reduced. One of the biggest challenges we have is the cost. That cost rolls down to the consumer. The business will absorb some of it as well. But small steps like that can really lead to a large gain and a lot of success. So I would just, you know, if you're on the fence or you're nervous or you just don't know where to start, take it one step at a time, I think, and reach out for help. Ask around, you know, and reach out to our local community associations that have some advice for you, like Sustainable Connections and other resources.
And we have so many people here who are willing to provide that help, willing to chat with whoever you are about where you want to go with your business. So thanks for that. We'll move on to our last set of questions here about hope. And then we'll stop there. So I have in my job as climate manager, I had the opportunity to be surrounded by a lot of information about the climate, which gets daunting sometimes. Certainly information about how the earth is changing, but really stories that come across my desk weekly about individuals, cities, states, and whole countries that are really stepping up to lead on this climate topic. And there's a few headlines that rise to the top for me from this last quarter. I want to throw a few out because they're inspiring to me. During the first quarter of 2022, there was a record $226 billion spent on clean energy development. And now, as of early 2022, more people are employed in clean energy power production than in the fossil fuel industry. There are more folks in solar, geothermal, etc., than we have in the fossil fuel industry. It's incredible. On a connected note, the last day in April in California, 99% of the electricity produced in that state, 99 plus, came from solar, geothermal, and other renewable means. 99% for the state of California. I think it's like the 34th largest economy in the world. In 2021, Washington State passed the HEAL Act, which defines environmental justice in law and requires the use of a racial justice lens in state government strategic plans and reporting that affects the environment. We already talked about the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act. California is banning the sale of internal combustion vehicles by 2035, and just recently our governor here enacted the same item into place. So by 2035, no more internal combustion engine cars to be sold in Washington State. IKEA is selling solar panels, or will be selling solar panels very soon. Amazing. And each panel you buy comes with a side of meatballs, the Swedish meatballs. Incredible. Plant-based. That's a joke, but it should be real. Maybe it will be after this. Anyone from IKEA? Here, probably not. We'll talk if you are, though. So many have called the climate crisis the greatest opportunity of all time to reset our relationship to the earth and our relationship to one another. What does the world look like on the other side of this challenge, and how are our guests here inspired to work toward their vision of that world? We'll explore this concept, and we'll start with Jen. Jen, what drives you to work on climate work as a student, and very soon, how long do you have? In December, very soon, as a future graduate, going to be out in the world. What's the vision that you're working toward?
Thank you. I don't know, I was kind of thinking about this question a lot, just because there's a lot you could say. I mean, like, you know, improved infrastructure, making cities more walkable, like doing mitigation to like reduce flooding and stuff. I don't know, there's just like a lot you could say, but I think for me, like one vision I have, which is pretty broad, I guess, is just like prioritizing people over profits. And by that also, like, not just the people, but their communities, their homes, their neighborhoods, places where they swim, where they recreate, just like the city, anywhere really. Just because I feel like right now, like collectively, like just since we're so focused on profit right now, a lot of times people and their well-being and their homes and their loved ones are just overseen, and I think that's very normal right now for the economy that we're in. And I think another thing along with that, for a vision that I have, is just to make life less of a burden for people, just because I feel like right now there's a lot of people, and probably doesn't even seem that way right now here where we are, but there's a lot of people out in the world who like have to choose between going to work and like not being able to take care of the kids, or just making really harsh decisions, and or where their neighborhood is, there's a lot of industries that pollute the air, and there's not a lot of action being taken in those neighborhoods, and so those people have higher health disparities, and so just a lot of things that are disproportionate right now in terms of who's being affected. And I think if we were to make circumstances a little bit better and improving environments for people, for all people, I think living could be a little bit easier. But that's the vision I have for now.
And it's an awesome one. Thanks for sharing that. Suzanne, what's inspiring you to create the solutions to the climate crisis? You talked a lot about zero waste. What gives you hope in the work that you do?
Thank you. You know, you're mentioning hope, and it kind of goes back to, you know, the reason that I started the nonprofit, the DISH Foundation, and DISH stands for Dignity, Independence, Sense of Purpose, and Hope, because our mission is to employ and educate individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I just keep hearing you say hope, and it resonates with me because that is such a powerful word, and that means so much to an individual, but as a community. So I think that, you know, a vision is, of course, us working all together for that common mission of just taking care of our environment, right? A lot of things that you mentioned and that you've mentioned that's going on in our oceans and whatever it is. I'm invested in the next generation. That's a whole, you know, that's where I'm coming from. And I think that not only like the day-to-day things that we can do, we have to remember that that is for our future generations and those that are going to come afterwards. So the small steps that we can make now are going to be leaps for the next generation. You know, we can start it, and I'll be long gone, but these inspiring individuals, our next generations, are going to carry that torch, right? So that's what motivates me. I think that there's a lot of hope behind that, knowing that you won't see an immediate result right now, but if you really try and make a difference, that in the long run you're going to see those results that you're so passionate about.
Thank you. Gib, what inspires you and your work? What gives you hope for people and planet?
That 100% electric WTA bus over there actually gives me quite a bit of hope. I mean, and I think what we are seeing is a recognition that globalism, outsourcing everything, shipping stuff around the world doesn't always work out that great, and take a global pandemic as a result of that. And I think trying to get things done more locally by, in a city that's setting up a climate change office with a transportation authority that's moving toward 100% electric buses, in the context of people like Jen and a younger generation that knows what the needs are technologically and they can make those happen. I mean, I think that's incredibly exciting. A bus running on a battery, truly amazing. But we've got hydrogen fuel cell technology. I think that with all of the just recent technological developments that are really poised to happen, I think we are coming towards a tipping point where moving away out of a fossil fuel world into one that is really kind of based on green technology is poised to happen, and I think it's got to, and it's going to.
Agreed, 100%. Betsy, we know you spent a lot of time thinking about hope. What gives you hope?
Okay, well, a lot. Just look how this movement has grown. Several years ago, I started going to the Climate Action Task Force meetings. The first ones were held in a small room outside the mayor's office, and there were maybe 4 of us sitting there. The last one I went to, a year later, was moved to the city council chambers, and it was standing room only. There were so many people there who wanted to know what was going on. When we started the Multi-Faith Network for Climate Justice, our first meeting was in the basement of the First Congregational Church, and about 20 people showed up. This last July, we held a Sacred Earth Fair at the Center for Spiritual Living, and over 500 people showed up. My daughter and son were the car park experts on U Street Road, and they had to send people down to Wade King Elementary School because there was no place to park anywhere near it. All the things you just mentioned, all of us have just mentioned. The IRA passing, the fact that either Ford or General Motors isn't going to be making ICE vehicles anytime after 2030. Check out the Bellingham High School tent. They have an environmental club, and they are raising money to buy solar panels to put on Bellingham High School's roof. If the district isn't doing it, they're not letting that stop them. They're buying solar panels and putting them up there. It's just, look around us. Everybody's getting off the dime and doing something. It's really, how could we not have hope? I mean, just the fact that California is doing its own solar, is doing its own energy. The 4th largest economy in the world is already there. So I just have tremendous hope. On a personal level, I do want to say, I've been an environmentalist for all my life. I joined the Sierra Club in 1975. I've been active with the Mount Baker Group. There's one of my buddies down there. I've been on the board of the Sierra Club. I got trained by Al Gore. I'm a proud member of the Climate Reality Bellingham chapter. We have a wonderful advocate here in Jill McIntyre Witt. You can go over to her table too. She does a lot of work for as an environmental activist. They're all people doing everything everywhere here. On a personal level, my spiritual beliefs extend beyond these experiences. They emanate from my deepest soul yearnings. My spiritual beliefs expand my commitment to climate justice because they crack open my heart and they expand my moral consciousness. They bring me to a place of hope and love on a very deep personal level. When I'm in the woods, in the mountains, I feel a connection to the sublime that opens me to a profound awareness of the interconnectedness of all life. And I just feel hope that our love for all life on earth will prevail. I really profoundly believe that there is no more powerful force on earth than love. And to truly see and recognize and love all living things makes it impossible to hurt them.
That was incredible. Thank you. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Let's give a round of applause here for being on stage, sharing your thoughts. Can we coax you to hang out for just a little bit further if folks want to chat with you? So thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. And I think what we're seeing is there's huge opportunity, huge hope. Just look around, as Betsy said, look around here, all of the different organizations that are doing great work. Please connect with them. Please get involved and stick around for the rest of the event, including, I think, at the far stage, the Walrus at 5 p.m. I think we heard them earlier doing the sound, the mic check. Thanks for being here. And then we'll be back here at 5:50, I think, for words from Port Commissioner Shepard. And later on, we'll hear from our keynote, Althea Wilson, from the Lemhi Nation. So stick around. And if you want to chat with our guests here, they'll be here. Thank you. Thank you very much.